Hello everyone, this is Tribecast episode 54 and my name is Marina. This week I have prepared for you 2 interviews with 3 different guests. First you'll hear Maggie Nurminen from Business Tampere, with whom we discussed the export possibilities and going abroad for startups. And then either Koskinen and Tommi Härmä from Merkurius Law will talk us a bit more of legal issues that a company founder needs to know. This is Tribecast, episode 54. Let's get started. First guest for this week is Maggie Nurminen. Maggie works for Business Tampere. I guess it's a good time to remind our listeners that we have already talked from Tommi Witti from Business Tampere and Sami Puttonen. But the more the merrier, because Maggie is doing something a bit different from the mentioned gentlemen. So, hello Maggie, thank you for having time for this interview and for your effort to create this remote format podcast. Could you please tell our listeners a few things about yourself?
Hi Marina and hi to all listeners. So, I'm Maggie Nurminen and as Marina said, I work for Business Tampere. My job there is to actually help companies go to international markets. And I also do some investment promotion, so trying to attract investments to the Tampere region. And actually, all of our services are free of charge, and we are kind of like a community manager for the Tampere region, business community in the Tampere region. Before Business Tampere, I have worked for the city of Tampere and the International Affairs Department. And also I have worked in local politics. I actually graduated from the Tampere University and I studied international relations. So I have a lot of passion towards, working with the global community and helping connect people all around the world.
All right. If my mom is listening to this podcast, here's the answer for her. Where can people who do international relationship work?
Yes, there are many different areas, and actually most of my friends from university have ended up working for different government entities or, in private companies doing communications or some kind of relationship management. Yeah, some people actually have even gone to do development work in Africa or other parts of the world, and very interesting career paths, and I'm actually one of the only ones who have stayed in Tampere, so
right.
I'm happy to still be here.
Good to have someone who takes care of us here. Speaking of other parts of the world, what are the main international partners of Tampere?
So actually, for me and my colleagues in Business Tampere, the way we work in promoting exports from Tampere is that we actually focus on all regions outside of Europe. So we kind of see Europe and the EU as the internal market, and we're trying to constantly focus our resource and attention to more faraway destinations where small and medium-sized companies from Finland may have a bigger challenge or obstacle to overcome to actually create successful business. And as we all know, any kind of export is really challenging, and the further you go from home, the more challenging it gets. And so that's why we really want to help where the help is really needed. Because for, let's say, a normal company, we're exporting to Sweden, for example, they actually don't really need that much help from the local government here in Finland. It's not really significant in that kind of process. But when we talk about Asian countries or African countries, there any kind of support from your local government or creating networks and partnerships where the company can draw support locally here from, it becomes more and more significant to the success. Mm-hmm. And so the relevant partners, we actually have some very good partners in China. The city of Tampere has a sister city relationship with Guangzhou, which is, I think, the fourth largest city in China. Also, the city has some existing relationships with Shenzhen, and that's I think, the third largest city in China. So together, these nearby cities actually form a very nice, focused South China home base for us. So we've been working a lot together with them, and we hope to really build up that relationship further in the business sector.
As far as I remember, you have been one of the participants in the last year's massive trip to China, the
Yes.
Greater Bay Area.
Yes, and we really had a fun time doing that. So we were partnering together with Tribe and the Finnish Bay Development Company to create a different kind of export mission to south of China. We were targeting the Greater Bay Area, so we actually started from Guangzhou, then we went to Shenzhen and Hong Kong. We kind of took a different approach to the whole export mission. So normally export missions, traditional sense, are either, companies going to certain expo or a certain event in a foreign market, or then they can be these kinds of government-led, like Business Finland-led delegations with high-level delegates and company CEOs. Yeah, the traditional kinds are understanding they're, a little bit resource-consuming and very official and high level. And sometimes that may not be the easiest format for like a startup or a small company to join, as it's, even just the resource needed to join is quite high.
Mm-hmm.
So what we wanted to do is to create a platform for companies and different institutions to join and to come and explore the Greater Bay Area together with us, and to form a new kind of community between the Nordic Finest Bay and the Chinese, the Greater Bay Area. And so we really wanted to incorporate the community approach to this and to make it as accessible as possible for startups or actually just anyone who wanted to join. And so we had a very open concept and open invitation for anyone who was interested. And the idea was that people covered their own costs, and together we were on this adventure. And we were actually working together with many friends of our partners in southern China. So we met with government entities, we met with local startup communities, serial entrepreneurs, investors, co-working spaces. It was actually very, very interesting and successful, even though, of course there are many things that we could do better in the future. But I think we were really good in trying something new. And actually we managed to have over 40 delegates traveling with us, which is very impressive. Sometimes chaotic, but I think overall it was really a nice adventure, and so many companies and people got new networks and increased their understanding of the Greater Bay Area in China.
I would like to ask you, from your perspective, why is it in general interesting and kind of necessary to go to Asian market if you're a European company or Finnish company in our case? I mean, when you talk about European inside trade, it's kind of obvious, like we have here Lakritsi and Finlayson, and we sell those to Norway and they give us back salmon or whatever. But when we think about Chinese market, it always seemed to me as already oversaturated by their own companies. So what's the good in stepping in there?
Actually, there is a lot to gain for Nordic companies going to China. So I think, first of all, there are many misconceptions, especially, in a traditional sense, when you talk to Finns or when you read the media. the views on China are still a little bit maybe outdated. So I think China is actually a very good place to test out your product, see how compatible it is or competitive it is, because there's actually a lot to gain. It's a very market-driven business community. They're actually much more advanced than us in many digital applications and utilization of platforms or e-commerce or, many of these future technologies. So China is a very attractive place to, test out your products and, see if your product is competitive and if your company has what it takes. And for a Nordic company also, of course, the market size is huge. So even if you would only focus on one region of China, let's say the Greater Bay Area, you're actually able to target a market of 130 million people in a relatively condensed area. So I think that's also a very, easy way to construct the market entry strategy and to access a large market, even, within a huge market such as China. So that's something I would really recommend doing. I have to mention also that in China, there's so much money there, free money available, that's looking for a new home. And so you do have so many investors and different entities that are looking to work together with the newest innovations and new upcoming companies. And I think it's something to consider if you don't want to go, to Silicon Valley or California, which I think is the typical dream of a startup entrepreneur.
Typical dream of a typical startup.
Yeah. And so in China, you can access just incredible amounts of resource that can really help you grow bigger. The other thing is also that in China, the consumers are very aware of new technologies, and they're very much attracted to all kinds of foreign products and foreign brands.
Mm-hmm.
And the Nordics have a very good image there, and Finland especially. And we actually even have very good government relationships, which also support that. So, they're really looking for all these new Nordic products, and I think that's really a great opportunity for our companies.
So probably my last question for today. What should be the first steps of a Finnish company which feels that they are good enough here in Finland and they would like to step to the international market, whether it's going to China or going to Europe or to the mentioned Silicon Valley, and how Business Tampere can help?
So what I always tell my clients is that to kind of try to help them think outside the box and to think of alternative options to the usual destinations like the U.S. or Germany or something, which are, I don't know, somehow ingrained in our typical export culture. Nowadays, the digital channels and new technologies really enable us to reach the other parts of the world in a very efficient manner. However, exports is a very resource-consuming operation, so it's always very important to keep in mind what kind of resources you have available, what is your primary target, and how you're going to reach that. And I always, tell them that you should definitely look for local partners. Would it be investors or distributors, agents, whatever. Accessing these faraway markets is so much easier when you have a trusted partner to work together with. And this applies to all markets in the world. And, after you get going and you get your first contacts and your networks, then you start to understand that better and you're able to make more intelligent decisions on if you want to go forward or, is that market suitable for you or not. And of course the typical competitor analyses and market research is also always advisable. But, keep an open mind, be curious, and we're here to help and to find new opportunities in Business Tampere.
All right, and then if you have any questions, you can always contact Business Tampere, and probably there will be someone to help you.
Yes, definitely. Don't hesitate. Also, I want to mention that we are actually providing free counseling and advice for companies on how to utilize different funding and aid opportunities to battle the COVID crisis, or actually to survive. So please visit our website and you can submit a contact request and we'll be right with you then. And we are really looking to help as many companies as possible to survive this crisis.
Maggie, thank you very much for this interview.
Thank you, Marina, and thank you for our listeners.
Now we have 2 guests. That's a very crucial moment for Tribecast in the times of remote work. Let me remind you that we are recording our podcasts currently from home because, we take care about ourselves and about our friends and family and co-workers and everybody. So please stay at home, wash your hands and stay healthy. And thank you very much to all of our guests and specifically to Ida and Tony for giving us a hand in recording, because that includes some technicalities and some adjustments to record each episode. So thank you very much for it. And now we're going to talk a bit more about the legal side of doing a business. When I was younger, I always thought that legal side and everything which is about law is very boring adult stuff, which I have nothing to do with, something very serious, very distant from me. And then I suddenly turned almost 30 and I understood that actually there is something there for me. So today, with the help of our guests, I'll try to figure out a bit more. What do I need to know if I decide to start my own business, and what kind of help I can get from a professional? But first, let's do the classic thing. Let's introduce our guests today. Hello, Ida. Hello, Tommi.
Hi. So yes, I'm Ida Koskinen, and with me here is Tommi Härmä as well. And we are both lawyers in a law firm called Merkurius Attorneys. We are a Tampere-based law firm focusing on business law, and basically that means that we only deal with businesses and not with the kind of private persons. So unfortunately, we're not in those kind of TV type of lawyers who are in the court fighting for justice in criminal cases, but we do focus on agreements and transactions and that kind of stuff. So my main area is kind of data protection and technology law related matters, and also agreements regarding those. And of course, we do have some disputes in these areas as well, so I handle those as well. But otherwise, our business is maybe a bit far away from the TV reality, but still it's not maybe as dramatic, but can be interesting as well.
Tommi, would you like to add a few words about yourself?
Sure. That was a great introduction about our company and our expertise in general. Yes, my name is Tommi Härmä, and I also work here at Merkurius Attorneys at Keskustori, and currently we mainly work from our home offices, but also certain days we come here to Keskustori if necessary. My expertise, I generally work mainly with the agreements as well as Ida, and also mergers and acquisitions, as well as dispute resolution cases in connection with these. I have special expertise in international commercial contracts, IT law, intellectual property rights, and also data protection legislation. Yeah, that's about my professional background, and during free time, I also try to find time for music, and it depends how much time there is for it, but I always try to find some time for playing the piano and enjoying music. That's a good way to forget all the work stuff, just to get that free time.
That's interesting. In Tampere community, in the core team, almost everybody in the team plays something. So maybe next time you do a workshop, we can always have a music intermediate, some kind of pause. We can find you some kind of small piano and you'll join the core team.
Okay, I want to participate in that one. I don't have any musical talent, so I leave that part to Tommi.
Okay, as far as I know, you participate in workshops where you explain to startups some stuff it's important for them to know. Could you please tell more about that?
Yes, we have been having this kind of cooperation with Tampere and Business Tampere for maybe 6 months or so now. So we've been participating in different workshops on advising startups on a pro bono basis. Like, for example, we had a training regarding non-disclosure agreements a few months ago before all this started, and we were still able to meet everyone face-to-face. And yes, so we've been interested in dealing with startups since that world is really kind of unique for lawyers. It's also a bit special field and makes the work maybe a bit more interesting as the questions are really one of a kind type of and differ much from those of larger companies. So yes, we have been doing this kind of work, and actually we've been planning to have this kind of startup network where we could offer our legal help in a kind of way of giving some trainings and that kind of stuff, and bring different startups together to discuss on these issues, since they are normally same for all the startups, or at least most of the startups. And then we could also have kind of outside speakers from financing and that kind of stuff. So that has been our law firm's one idea to create, but due to the corona situation, it has been a bit put to ice for a while. But hopefully during the autumn we could start this project as well.
Yeah, hopefully it will work. Definitely looks like something interesting. And then again, any kind of startup consultation always looks good for me on behalf of Tampere community. So any kind of network or support is always something we would like probably to step in, or at least keep a close eye on. Last year, during the first season of Tribecast, we had Linda and Harry to talk about IPR. So I guess both me and our listeners figured a bit why is it needed to protect your intellectual property rights and more or less how to do it. What other kind of topics you work with? Is there anything else which a startup, especially an early stage startup, needs to think of?
Yeah, good question. The IPRs usually are the most valuable asset of startups, and that's why they are so big issue to take care of at the first issues, especially. But there are also certain other areas that should be taken care of. Maybe we could divide the issues to those that relate to the company itself, meaning that first of all you have to take care of maybe establishing a company, want to have an Osake Limited Liability company, or deciding what kind of form business shall be conducted. And in that there is also, you have to take care of maybe shareholders agreement if there are several shareholders involved, and also maybe if there are any employees, you have to take care of the employment agreements. These issues aren't usually obligatory for the early stage startups because they don't have employees. Besides the company issues, there are also issues relating to the commercialization or commercializing your company's products. When you get to that stage that you have an actual product or even an idea that you want to commercialize, then you have to take care of the protection. Mainly, it relates to the IPRs and IPR protection. You can take care of usually of that by using the confidentiality agreements, NDAs, so-called. So at the first step, you should minimum know how to use properly an NDA, and how to protect your valuable assets by using that. If you want to share any ideas between, for example, investors or protect possible cooperation partners, then you should always have an NDA to protect. And also, if you have, after the NDA, the cooperation may continue and you may be even able to sell your product, then you have to take care of the agreements concerning the selling of the products or licensing the products. Different kind of agreements are in use, and you have to take care of them case by case. And then it's usually advisable, for example, a lawyer in this case, and just ask what kind of agreement should be taken into place. So there are always several phases in which you should maybe, it would be a good idea to seek a second opinion from a lawyer in order to avoid any problems that may come in the future.
I have recently heard an opinion that investors might be a bit skeptical when an early stage startup comes and first handles them an NDA and then starts to talk to them. Have you noticed that?
Well, I don't think of course it depends on the investor, and I can understand why it might feel for an investor a bit funny, but on the other hand, it's always, if you have a really unique idea or a really unique product, it's advisable to protect that idea and to make sure that it's confidential, the kind of negotiation that you're having with the investor or any other party. So from my personal opinion, it shouldn't be that weird that someone wants to protect their idea, since a normal NDA doesn't mean anything else than just that the two parties keep the discussion and what the other party shares within those discussions confidential. So to me, it sounds a bit weird if someone has problems to keep that kind of confidential, and it's always a good idea to have that obligations on paper. It doesn't have to be a complicated paper or even a long paper, but the basic idea that the discussions are confidential and the other party won't use the information that it will receive for any other purpose than for kind of establishing that relationship with the startup. So I would advise that at least if someone is really not willing to sign an NDA or not willing to agree on confidentiality obligation, that's a bit of red flag for me, since it shouldn't be that big of a deal.
You said the word unique, and I start to think, probably every startup or every starting company thinks that they have invented something which has never been invented before, even though it's a bicycle or a wheel again. In Finland, what are the ways to check if your idea is actually unique?
Well, that's a good question as well. There is no one answer to this question, actually. There are certain databases that you can use and do some searches. For example, on the patented inventions, there is a PatInfo called database that includes all the Finnish patents, but this search is not always the best way to look for information. On the other hand, I don't know what kind of other ideas, because idea you can patent or protect it in other ways than by using NDA. So there are many ideas that aren't really protected in any other way than by the agreement itself. So maybe just to consult again some expert in this case that can be checked by case, which would be the right place to seek for more information.
Mm-hmm. When starting a company, when is the right time to look for a lawyer or for a legal advisor?
Well, it depends maybe a bit of the situation and the company itself, since like Tommi said earlier, that you can kind of divide the legal needs into the matters that regard the business or the company itself and then the actual business. So if you aren't familiar with all the normal kind of company legislation that handles how you establish a firm and what kind of things you have to, what kind of paperwork you have to create, then that phase might be already the one where you need some expert to help you. But if you manage to do this by yourself, then of course the need for a lawyer might come a bit later. The situation where you have, for example, more than one shareholder in the company, then it's really advisable to have a shareholders agreement to kind of establish the relationship between the different shareholders so that it's clear for everyone how the obligations are divided and how the money will be divided hopefully in the future, since this is one of the key agreements that causes disputes if there is no shareholders agreement, or if it's vague or somewhat not that kind of well written. So shareholders agreement, they are actually quite hard agreements. So there I would really recommend to have a lawyer to check that and to make sure that the shareholders agreement really kind of serves your needs, since those kind of general model shareholder agreements don't fit every situation. But otherwise, it depends when you want to use a lawyer. Of course, it's always advisable to have a lawyer with you when you're kind of creating your production chains and that kind of stuff, so that you will have those agreements to protect your business. But it depends really much on the business itself, what kind of protection and how much you can rely on, for example, your trading partners' model agreements, and how much you need some kind of support of your own. But I think that the people have some misunderstandings about lawyers. We're not that expensive as most of people think, and actually might become to be really much more cheaper to use a lawyer than not to use one, and find out later that everything wasn't quite right. So in that sense, it might be a good investment to have some help. I think that people should consider lawyers more like IT consultants, since it's kind of clear that you need someone to do your website and design a look for your business, and you are ready to pay for that. And I would put the lawyers in the same category, that they are the kind of not essential, but really needed for that good foundation to run your business on.
I think I've got lots of very interesting information, and I hope that our listeners will also learn something new from this conversation. Thank you very much for this interview, Ida and Tommi. I did enjoy the talk. Thank you. This was Tribecast episode 54, and I would like to once again thank the guests of this week for the support in creating remote podcast episodes. Next week we'll continue talking about startup life on various channels. Don't forget to search on your favorite platform like Spotify, Google Podcasts, iTunes or YouTube for freshest episodes. My name is Marina, and I wish you all a nice weekend. Stay safe and stay warm and tuned.